Hi everyone, my name is Jessalyn and I wanted to make a video describing my childbirth, which was natural with no medication in a birthing center. I know that whenever I was contemplating making that decision for myself, I really wanted to do a lot of research, and I watched a lot of videos of other people describing their experience to see if it's something that I wanted to do, and it really helped me make the choice that I made. So if you're contemplating giving birth naturally in a birthing center or without medication in a hospital, or if you're just curious in general, please keep watching. I actually moved to Omaha, Nebraska when I was 6 months pregnant. In Omaha, Nebraska, it's actually illegal to give birth with a licensed care provider outside of a hospital setting. So freestanding birth centers are illegal, as are home births if you want to have a licensed doctor or midwife present. There is one birthing center attached to a hospital in Omaha and one in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's all for the state. But the one in Omaha is located at CHI Immanuel, and it's run by a midwife named Heather Ramsey, and she is absolutely incredible. And so when I moved to Omaha, I decided that that's where I wanted to give birth, was in this birthing center that was attached to the hospital, and I wanted to be treated by Heather Ramsey. So I made my appointment. I started going at around 6 months after I moved from Alabama and began seeing her. The birthing center there, it's basically you get off the elevators, and instead of taking a left to go to the labor and delivery unit, you just go straight, and it's through those doors that you have the birthing center. If any type of medical emergency had arisen, they could have easily moved me from that birthing center to the OR. It wouldn't have been any different than going from a labor and delivery room to the OR. So I felt very safe and very secure. I know that's a little bit different than a lot of birthing centers. To me, it was important that I be in a hospital, so that way, in case I needed any type of intervention, I would have that without having to go on an ambulance ride. But at the same time, I really wanted a low intervention. I didn't want the availability of drugs, and I also did not want people trying to force themselves on me. And that's the major reason why I made my decision to do what I did. But Heather Ramsey was amazing, and that's why I chose her and her team also. They were very caring, and to me, giving birth with a midwife is a lot different than giving birth with the doctor. And I'll go into that a little bit later. Once I found my provider, we started going to all these labor and delivery classes. I picked a doula. The labor and delivery classes were like 6 weeks long, and they told us all really the different options that you have, not just unmedicated, but medicated as well, so you can make an intelligent and informed decision when you're deciding on your birth plan. And we all know that birth plans don't go as planned all the time. So my class actually taught us a lot about that too, and it also really prepared my husband, who knew nothing about childbirth. So he felt really prepared going into today as well, and I would highly recommend that. But in order to start the actual birth story, I need to start 5 weeks before I actually gave birth. When I was 35 weeks pregnant, one night I started having a little bit of bloody discharge, and so I called the doctor's office. They said, it's not completely unnormal. Just monitor it. If it gets really bad or you have any contractions associated with it, call us and let us know. And that was after one of my childbirthing classes. And then flash forward to that weekend. It was a Saturday. We love watching college football, so me and my husband were laying around all day watching college football, and I noticed that I felt the baby kicking in the morning, and that the whole game I didn't really notice anything. I actually fell asleep during the football games. I didn't make it through an entire football game while I was pregnant without falling asleep. But when I woke up from the nap, and as the night went on, I didn't feel any more movement, and I automatically just started getting afraid. I think it was about 10 hours of no movement. I think it was around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I finally said, okay, I think we need to go to the hospital. I called. I said, I haven't felt the baby move in about 9 to 10 hours. I think I need to come in and just make sure everything's okay. They said, yeah, come on in. We'll hook you up to a monitor and just see what's going on. So we went to the hospital then. Long story short, baby was completely fine. She was just deciding she was not going to move for a while. I guess she's taking a long nap because she doesn't like football. She likes to sleep through it, which is still true today. So everything was good. But while I was there, they had the fetal monitor hooked up. They also had the monitor measuring, I guess, my vitals, but also my contractions, if I had any. And I was laying there, and she was telling me, oh, everything's good with the baby. And she goes, have you been having contractions? I was like, not that I know of. She goes, well, you're having one right now. And I was like, I didn't know that. She's like, have you ever felt contractions? I was like, I don't think so. I don't really know what they feel like. I'm like, what do they even feel like? Like, I have no idea. And she's like, well, kind of like a tightening. And I was like, well, I'm not sure. I said, I felt something sort of like that, but I thought it was just the baby pushing on me and making my, stomach stretched out more, so it felt tight because of that. She's like, well, you've had multiple contractions since you've been here. They're about, 10 minutes apart, so they're not very close at all. But, maybe you could be giving birth sooner rather than later. And I was like, yes, because I hated being pregnant. So I was super thrilled. I was hoping, if we could just get like a week or two more, the baby could be full term, we'd be good to go. So that was week 35. Flash forward, I was 38 weeks pregnant, and I was almost 39 weeks. So it was a Saturday, and I turned 39 weeks pregnant the following Monday. And I was at home, and one practice that my husband and I used to try to induce labor once we knew the baby was full term was we had sex a lot, just trying to really move that labor along. I know in the hospitals, some induction methods that they use are inserting artificial semen. And so we made sure that we were able to get that, and trying to just soften up my cervix and try to get contractions moving. That night in particular, after we had sex, I started getting contractions. Maybe about an hour afterwards, I started getting really, really, really heavy contractions. I was in so much pain. I was doubling over. I couldn't really talk through the contractions. I was having to get on my hands and knees on the staircase and like rock back and forth. That's the only thing that felt remotely comfortable, was to be on my hands and knees on the stairs, not on the ground, on the stairs. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. Am I in labor? I, for some reason, didn't believe I was in labor. I was just convinced that it was never going to happen, essentially. I don't know why I was convinced in my head that I was going to have to be induced, because I knew that's what I didn't want to happen. And so I was just psyching myself out, thinking, because you don't want it to happen, it's going to end up happening. So I was calling my mom, I was calling my doula, saying, here's what's happening. And they were like, okay, we'll just, monitor it, see if they go away. They weren't getting any better. So I thought to myself, okay, well, I better go try to get some sleep if I can, because if I'm in labor, I'm going to need as much rest as I can get. So I went upstairs, I got in bed, I put my heating pad under my back because I was having contractions mostly in my back. I think when you have, which I'll talk about this later as well, when you have back contractions, at least for me, the pain is so bad in the back that up front, you really can't feel it. So I didn't really monitor what was going on up front. It was just so much in the back. So I went and laid on my heating pad, and I fell asleep. I woke up a few hours later, and the contractions were basically gone. They were I could feel some pain every now and then, a lot lighter, but the bulk of the contractions were gone. They definitely weren't as close together. They weren't as strong, and I got super, super depressed. The next day I went to the gym, and I ran, and I walked, and I went and got the spiciest food I could tolerate, which is the steak at Chipotle. I'm such a wimp. I cannot eat spicy food. But I did all these induction methods. I've been doing them for a while. I got super, super depressed and down, thinking, I'm never going to go into labor naturally. Even after I thought I was in labor, I'm clearly not, and I don't know what to do. So that was on a Saturday that all of that happened. So I was supposed to go in Monday for my 39-week appointment, but my midwife had to push it back till Wednesday. So I went about my life from Saturday night to Wednesday. I went to work on Wednesday. I actually I had started using clary sage the night before in my diffuser. So I took my diffuser to work, poured clary sage in it. I was diffusing clary sage all day long. And I took my birthing ball and moved my office chair and put my birthing ball where my office chair was, and just worked while I was bouncing on the ball. And my coworkers were laughing so hard because they walked past my office and they would just see me bouncing on the ball in front of the computer. I was adamant I was going to try to get that baby out. So I did that all day. I had been having contractions at that point for over 4 weeks since that 35-week scare when we went to the hospital. I've been having contractions since then, so I didn't really think anything was different. I thought, these are just Braxton Hicks, like they're just going to continue. So I had some pain during that day. I had some tightening, but I didn't really think anything of it. So I left work and went to my doctor's appointment. It was actually with my midwife. I went to my midwife's appointment, and she comes in, and with midwives, it's a lot different than with the doctor. They're more wanting to know how you feel, not necessarily medical symptoms, but like mental state. They're wanting to talk to you, and it's not just come in hands-on and walk out. They actually have like really in-depth conversations. They're with you for as long as you want to be. It's not a set schedule with your appointment. And so the midwife walked in, Heather Ramsey, and she had her the Doppler to just check the heartbeat. And she was sitting down. She's like, so tell me what's going on. How do you feel? And I told her basically, and I even used the words, I said, I am done being pregnant. I can't do this anymore. I'm in so much pain all the time. My back is killing me. I'm having contractions. I am just tired. I had morning sickness my entire pregnancy, so I was still throwing up. And I was just completely over being pregnant. And I was telling her I was super depressed. Up until that point, we had not checked my cervix at any of my appointments because there's actually several reasons for that. One is that it's not really indicative of anything. You can be at 0 centimeters dilated and go into labor in an hour and give birth in a few hours. Or you could be, kind of far along dilated, and you could be that way for weeks. So to me, it wasn't really going to do anything except for possibly either get my hopes up and make me think, oh, am I going to labor super soon? And then I'm not going to labor, or it was going to make me even further depressed, thinking I'm never going to go in labor. So I had been putting it off, and there's also the other reason is that it risks infection. And not only does it risk infection, but it also risks breaking the bag too early. If the baby's head's not far down enough and the bag is broken, it can cause a prolapse cord or other problems. So I definitely didn't want to risk those things, especially if I wasn't far enough along. So we didn't check until she said basically, well, do you want me to check you since you're so, you're so upset about still being pregnant? Do you want to see like how far along you are? See if you think it'll be anytime soon. And I was like, yes, like I can't take it anymore. Like I need to know. I need to know something. And so my worry got the best of me, and I said, yes, check me. So I lay down. She checks my cervix, and she feels around for a second. She's looking, and she goes, oh. And she says, so you're 80% effaced and 4 centimeters dilated. She's like, I was shocked. I didn't know it was going to be that thin, so I couldn't find it at first. And then I finally realized that was your cervix. So yeah, you're pretty far along. She goes, I think we can go ahead and strip your membranes, and you could have a baby. And I was like, she said, you want me to strip your membranes? And I was like, yes. Like without even hesitating, I was like, yes. I can't do this anymore. I stripped my membranes. Let's get this thing started. So she stripped my membranes. It was like a quick just whoop, whoop, and it was done. It didn't really hurt too much during that, but immediately afterwards, I felt like a period cramp. I was like, but my first thought was, oh crap, what did I just do? Because if this works like it's supposed to, I'm going to be a mom very soon, and I'm going to have to go through this labor. That's obviously really scary. So I I was like, oh crap, what did I just do? Well, at that appointment also, my baby had decided to take another long nap and had not moved for probably 5 or 6 hours, which is actually fairly normal when they really are about to be born because they kind of rest themselves. But she wanted to go ahead and do a non-stress test, which my baby actually failed. And then we had to go in for an ultrasound to make sure everything was good. And she passed with flying colors. She was just kind of chilling, and she was actually, her whole body, she was moving barely, but not, I guess, enough for me to feel. And she was like head banging, like legitimately like doing this in my cervix. So my midwife said, I think that you're going to have a baby tonight. And I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. I've been through this before where I was basically in labor and then it just stopped. So I don't believe you. I don't believe it's going to happen. And she was hugging me. She's like, I'm so excited for you. And I'm just over here saying, I'll see you next week, for my appointment. She's like, no, you won't. And so I didn't believe her. So I let my whole family know. My mom was ready to jump in the car and drive to Nebraska. And I was like, no, hold off. Like, I don't think I'm in labor. I don't think this is going to work. Like, I don't want you guys coming here and me not being in labor. So we already had our last class scheduled that night. It was actually a breastfeeding class. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to go about living my life, not thinking that I'm in labor. I'm just going to go about my life, doing what I normally would do. And if I am going into labor soon, I think the breastfeeding class will be very, very helpful because I might have to breastfeed within the next, 24 hours. So that was at like around 4:20 p.m. is when I had my membrane stripped. I called my husband, said, hey, here's what happened. She thinks I'm going to go into labor tonight, but we're going to go to our class as planned. I'll meet you at home. Went home, we went to our class. The whole class, I just bounced on a ball. Again, I walked around some, and the contractions got a little bit closer together and more intense, and I started having more bloody discharge. I was losing my mucus plug, and so, which again, that's normal. And I also knew that your mucus plug can regenerate itself, so it coming out really didn't mean anything to me. I thought maybe it's coming out because she stripped my membranes or something like that. So that was not indicative of being in labor to me. So after the breastfeeding class, we actually got back in the car. My mom had been like, give me an update. I need to know what's going on. So I called her. I said, hey, still not in labor. She's like, I bet you're going to go into labor. I bet you're going to give birth soon. Yeah. And I'm like, no, Mom, I don't think I am. I think, I'm having some minor contractions, but I think they're just going to go away like they did last time. And she was like, well, how far apart are they? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not timing them. It's not a big deal. I'm not in that much pain. It can't be labor time. And so she was like, well, start timing them. And I was like, no. She's like, well, I'll time them. Tell me when you're having a contraction. So I was like, okay, geez, I will tell you when they start. And so we're on the phone. I said, oh, hey, I think I'm having a contraction. So she starts timing. And, I tell her, okay, I think it's over. And she's like, that was a whole minute long. It was a minute-long contraction. And I'm like, and? She's like, let me know when the next one hits. And so I told her, and it had been about 5 minutes. So my contractions at that point, she monitored them my whole drive home, which is about a 20-minute drive. And we were having them about every 5 minutes. So I had about 4 during that car ride. And so she was all like, I gotta get in the car. You're in labor. I'm like, Mom, there is no way I'm in active labor because even though they're 5 minutes apart, I'm telling you the pain is not intense enough to be real labor. There's no way I'm about to have a baby. So I was like, just, let me tell you when to come. I don't want you guys coming too early. She's like, well, I don't want to get there. I don't want to leave too late. Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, well, just give me a few more hours. I'll let you know. I was like, we're going to have sex when we get home to try to move everything along. I'll let you know how it is after that. So we got home. We had dinner. We took a shower. We got down to business. And the same way it had been the prior Saturday night, afterwards, I was in a ton of pain, doubled over, horrible pain. I told my mom that, but I also told her, same thing as last time. It's probably just going to go away. I'm going to try to go to sleep. I'm going to put my heating pad on. So it's all in my back again. And I said, it's probably going to go away. So I told her not to get in the car. She's like, okay, well, we're going to go to sleep and we're going to get up really, really early in the morning. We're going to get in the car if you're still in labor. If you're still in labor at 4 a.m., I'm getting in the car. And I was like, okay. So Around 11 p.m., I was in a lot of pain still. It had been going on for several hours at that point. The prior weekend, it had been about 6 hours total of those contractions, and at this point it had been probably a couple hours of those contractions, the really heavy ones. So I decided, okay, again, if this is it, I need to get as much rest as I can. We got to go to bed. Plus, I was saying, if I do wake up in the middle of the night or wake up in the morning and the contractions are gone, I got to go to work tomorrow morning. So I was like, I got to go to bed. So we went to bed, and I laid in bed for a while because obviously I was anxious. I was really torn between trying to time the contractions and trying to sleep. So, and I was also like really hard because when the contractions would come, obviously they would hurt really bad. So if you didn't fall asleep in between the contractions, the next one would basically like wake you up. So I finally dozed off for about 30 minutes, and that was probably around 2 a.m. I fell asleep for about 30 minutes, and I actually had a dream that my water broke. And I woke up and I was in a panic. I ran to the bathroom. There was nothing. So my water had not in fact broken, but in my dream, the contractions were so intense and it had broken my water. So when I woke up, the contractions were even more intense than they had been when I went to sleep, which is something completely different from that past Saturday night, because the past Saturday night when I went to sleep, they went away. But this time they had gotten worse. And so I still laid in bed for about 2 hours. I started timing them. I was texting my mom the whole time because she couldn't sleep either. So I timed the contractions. They, after we had sex, they had gotten to about 1 minute apart at one point. And I actually called the doctor at that point and said, like, hey, they're a minute apart. And they're like, you need to get to the hospital. But I told my husband, I was like, I don't feel like I'm in labor. Like, I don't feel like it's time. And the birthing center won't even admit you until you're 6 centimeters dilated. So it would be really disadvantageous for me to get in the car, run there, just for them to check me and say, oh, you're at a 4, or oh, you're at a 5, because then I have to go back and go home. So I was like, I'd rather just labor here as long as I can. I'm comfortable here, and I just don't want to get there too early, and I don't really want to be there too long either. So I was going to labor as long as I could until I thought it was dangerous to continue to labor at home. And so my doula was planning to come the next morning to my house, and I told my mom around 4 a.m., I was like, okay, I think this is it. I think I'm going to stay in labor and going to give birth, hopefully within the next, 12 hours or so. I was hoping it was going to be really soon, but for some reason I had a feeling that I was going to have a very long labor, and I had a feeling that I just wasn't to that point yet. And my main reasoning for that was, although the pain was very intense and it did hurt, I thought to myself that this pain is definitely not bad enough for a baby about to be coming out, because a lot of women say that, they labor for hours and then they have to get an epidural because the pain is just so strong. And I was telling myself, if women can't handle this pain, then women are all wimps. So I was like, surely that's not the case. I don't think this pain is to the point where I'm about to give birth. So I let Austin sleep till probably about 6:15, 6:30, and I woke him up and I said, hey, I'm in labor. I need you to call your boss. I need you to arrange for a car for my dad, because my dad I told him around 4 a.m. as well, and he booked a 5:15 a.m. flight up to Omaha, so he was going to arrive around 9:30. Told my husband, I said, book my dad a car, call your boss, tell him you're not going to be able to come in today, that your wife's in labor and all that. And he was still pretty delirious, and so I was saying, I was like, book my dad the car. He's like, oh, I'll just take care of that when I get to work, because he worked for a rental car company. He's like, I'll just do that when I get to work. And I was like, babe, you're not going to work. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm having a baby. Like, you're not going to work today, hun. So he's like, oh, okay. And he called his boss, told him, she's in labor, we're not coming in. But I was still putting on, laboring at home for a little while longer. I was like, I'm going to stay here until, I thought my doula was coming over. So I was like, I'm going to stay here until she gets here and tells us we need to go to the hospital, or until I just think it's very unsafe. And so I was like, hey, go make me some breakfast. I'll be down in a minute. When I got up out of bed, pretty soon afterwards, I was walking around trying to get everything, like, we had our bags packed for the hospital, but there was a couple of things I was trying to, like, grab in addition to that, and, like, get my toiletries and stuff. So I was doing all that, and soon after I stood up, I started feeling like I had to poop. And I was aware that when you are about to have to push, when the baby's head is down there, it feels like you have to poop. That's what feeling like you have to push, the urge to push, feels like. And I always was confused by that. I'm like, how could it actually feel like you have to poop? Fun fact, it does. It does feel exactly like that with a lot of pain involved, obviously. But so I knew that, and I was like, okay, I've been having contractions for a long time. This is not, like, this could be the baby's head. Maybe I have a really high pain tolerance and this is the baby's head, or maybe I actually have to poop. But either way, I didn't want to stay at my house and give birth on the toilet. So I called my midwife. The one thing I didn't like was there was this procedure I had to go through. I had to call this number, which transferred me to a number like in Texas. That woman had to call my midwife, who then had to call me. So it was about a 30 to 45 minute long process of trying to get in touch with my midwife. And finally my midwife called me back and she says, I hear that you're having, you're feeling the urge to poop. And I said yes, and I explained how long I had been having contractions, how far apart they were. And she said, I think you need to come into the hospital because, if you're feeling the urge to push, you could be about to have a baby and you don't want to give birth in your car. So I said, okay. She's like, how far away are you? I said, well, it'll take us about 20 minutes to get there, but we'd have to get some things together first. And so I said, we'll probably get on the road in about 30 minutes. And she's like, okay, I'll have the midwife on call waiting for you. I said, great. So Austin was making my husband was making my breakfast. I told him, I said, okay, let's take the dogs out. Let's get everything secure. I'm going to get the bags. We basically got everything loaded in the car. It took us maybe a little bit longer than 30 minutes. And we got in the car, we said bye to the dogs, and we weren't entirely certain because, again, we didn't know if I was 6 centimeters dilated or not. We didn't know if we were going to turn around and come back, but we were pretty certain that we had left our house for the last time as without a baby. So we said bye to the dogs. I said, you're going to have a sibling when we come home, and we got in the car. I had multiple contractions on the way to the hospital. Actually, before we got in the car, because like I said, I had morning sickness. I actually had a contraction in our kitchen right before we got in the car and threw up during it. And it really, throwing up while you're contracting, not fun. So we got in the car. I told my whole family, like, actually, he was supposed to tell our family and he didn't, but I posted an Instagram video and they hadn't known yet, so they got kind of mad about that. But we told everybody we were on our way to the hospital. It was a little bit of traffic because it was rush hour. We were probably around 7:45 at that point. And we got to the hospital just before 8 o'clock in the morning. I think I got, like, officially settled around 8:03.